So just how much is Donald Trump's new campaign strategy affecting Hillary Clinton in these polls? And can he hold on to this momentum through November? Here to help break it all down, Jessica Tarlov, Adam Goodman, and Lisa Boothe. Lisa, let me go to you. There's no doubt that Donald Trump has a lot of momentum. But as we comb through these numbers, we also see Johnson and Stein, particularly Johnson, also taking away, eroding some of that support for Hillary as well.
Well, yeah, especially with the younger voters. And this is a big question mark for Hillary Clinton and also a problem. Is she going to be able to rebuild that Obama coalition and not only rebuild it, but also get those voters to turn out? 538 did analysis just looking at African-American voters who turned out in historical margins in 2008 and 2012 for President Obama, the first African-American president. And if Democrats, if that's African-American support, returned to pre-Obama levels of turnout and partisanship, Democrats would lose Florida, and their lead in Ohio and Virginia would be cut in half based off of that solely. So I think Hillary Clinton's going to have a tough time rebuilding that coalition. And also you see Trump that is certainly gaining momentum in the polls. We've seen that in this polls and other national and state-specific polls that have been released in recent weeks.
Adam, what do you attribute this to? Is this the new pivot, the most recent pivot, Donald Trump staying for the most part on message, sticking with the teleprompter, keeping that even keel, or just a series of miscues that Hillary Clinton just cannot seem to avoid?
Charles, this is what happens when the focus goes back to a referendum on the system. For a couple of days, Secretary Clinton obviously has had what you might call her deplorable week. And after having been off the field for a couple of days, you see what happens when Americans focus once again on what is in front of them. Look what the poll says to us. 6 in 10 believe the world is become a much scarier place. 7 in 10 are down in government. There's a 9-point enthusiasm gap between Republicans and Democrats. And the most worrisome sign of all, certainly for the secretary, is that young voters and minorities are among those less likely to turn out. But with all this said, we are seeing so many polls out there right now, Charles, that you might say this is a read on a very good week for Donald Trump and a very bad week for the secretary, all of which, of course, could turn on its head again as we head into that wonderful day called September 26th, when over 90 million Americans are likely going to see the first toe-to-toe debate between the two.
You know, Jessica, there's no doubt, obviously, Donald Trump has momentum, and there's probably a lot of reasons for it. And it's really interesting because it started to seem like maybe Hillary was distancing herself from the email scandal. Some of the polls going into the last weekend were looking pretty good for her. They didn't get a lot of press.
Right.
And then came the mishandling of her pneumonia, the scare crisis, and just another mountain for her to climb over. In the meantime, Trump is looking polished, he's looking presidential, and he's really resonating.
I guess so. I mean, he's still saying a lot of rubbish, quite frankly. And I think that this really comes down to whether...
When you say rubbish, what do you mean?
I mean, tax plans that don't add up. I mean, he offered a $4.4 trillion tax cut today, and everyone's talking about, you know, her health and the polls about that, and, you know, did she hide it? When did she tell Tim Kaine? I mean, a $4.4 trillion tax cut. Or the fact that he's
a lot of people like those tax cuts. We're going to get into details with some economic experts later on about the tax plan. But that's traditional, right? Isn't that traditional? Republicans like smaller government. Traditionally, lower taxes. Democrats want bigger government, bigger taxes, and more of a nanny state. I don't want to discuss that part. I'm talking about the idea that Hillary Clinton has sabotaged her own campaign, and Donald Trump, in the meantime, has gotten better and better and better.
He has gotten better.
You've got to be afraid of that.
Props. I'm not that afraid. I'm not petrified, but I'm concerned, and I think anyone...
Why'd you wear a black dress?
I wear black all the time. It makes me look
She's
better.
mourning.
I'm not mourning, Lisa. I'm feeling great. No, what I would say is I think Kellyanne Conway has had a fantastic effect on this campaign, and we've seen less Steve Bannon than I thought that we would, which is a good thing. She definitely had a bad week. I agree with Adam's assessment, but I think it was more the health stuff than it was the deplorables comment, because that's going to be a trend going through the rest of this. But
Lisa, Adam, you know, listen, we've been through this already. We saw where Donald Trump took the lead after the GOP. We saw where Hillary took a massive lead after her convention, and now it feels like we're back to go. But the difference, of course, is with just 8 weeks left, Donald Trump's got this momentum. Can everything change with the debates? Is it still enough up in the air? Are there still enough question marks out there?
I do think so. I think the debates are going to be a big deal for both candidates because they both have something to prove. And to Jessica's point regarding Donald Trump's practice, Hillary Clinton has been doing this for decades. She's had so much media training, so many mock debates, so many prep for interviews. I mean, the fact that she's as bad of a candidate as she still is after that much training really should be troublesome to the Democratic Party. And I think, honestly, Donald Trump benefits from the fact of basically what Jessica just said. There are such lower expectations from Donald Trump in the first debate than there's going to be for Hillary Clinton. So if Donald Trump shows up, does a decent enough of a job, it's going to be a win for Donald Trump, and that's the way it's going to be viewed.
That you're basically admitting the fact that you're going to be electing someone whose bar was down here versus someone who's actually qualified.
It'd be more concerning for me to have a candidate who has been doing this for decades and is still so
Can I say something?
bad.
And I know I'm going to get cut off. Just one thing. We're running a campaign right now. Governing is a lot different. She may not be a great campaigner, but she'll be a fantastic
Well, let me bring in Adam. Adam, there is the risk, though, of Republicans and the Donald Trump camp thinking, hey, the bar is low, so I need a minimal. That's also that could also be something of a trap as well, couldn't it?
No question. Let me offer this, Charles, having been doing this for 37 years and having been with so many candidates behind the curtain. When you're a front runner, which is what I think Hillary Clinton believes she's been for the better part of the last month, you start to try to play it safe. You start to worry about taking risks. You start to not necessarily bring your A game every time out. When you're the challenger trying to come on like Donald Trump has been, you start to let it all hang out. And I think what Hillary Clinton is going to have to try to find and rediscover by the 26th, by the time we hit that first major debate, is her sea legs again. And I can tell you, no matter how many times you run for office, no matter how often you're there in the public fishbowl, you still have in the back of your mind, maybe, just maybe, I've hit a patch where I may not recover. And I can tell you psychologically, Secretary Clinton is starting to second-guess herself right now and is starting to be concerned about what's ahead. And that puts even more of an emphasis on how she performs moving forward.
That's a great point.